Okay, so for today's bell ringer, we're going to talk about how to write better explanations in body paragraphs or race paragraphs. One of the things that I've been seeing in a lot of our essays is that we are following the format for essay writing to the T. We are citing really relevant information and evidence, but we're struggling a little bit with explaining how that evidence is significant to our thesis statement. So we're going to go over that right now. All right, so let's take a look at this body paragraph. Let's say we were writing an essay that we're currently writing in class about the theme that racism is a dangerous reality society in the novel The Circuit by Francisco Jimenez. And this is going to be our first body paragraph. It says the theme that racism is a dangerous reality of society is explored throughout the novel. Notably, the reader sees this theme unfold in the interactions between Miss Scalapino and Panchito. In the novel, Panchito explains, "But when I spoke to Arthur in Spanish and Miss Scalapino heard me, she said no with body and soul. Her head turned left and right 100 times and her index finger moved from side to side as fast as a windshield wiper on a rainy day. English, English," she repeated. Jimenez 20. In this scene, Miss Scalapino engages in racist behavior when yelling at Panchito for speaking with his friend in his native language. By shouting at Panchito and shaking his finger at him, she shows how angry she is that he's speaking Spanish instead of English. This is significant because it illustrates that Miss Scalapino views the Spanish language and Spanish-speaking people as inferior to English. Her treatment of Panchito makes him hesitant to speak or participate in the classroom. Overall, Miss Scalapino's actions are detrimental to Panchito's educational experience and his self-esteem. Okay. So when we're explaining our evidence, ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, what does the evidence show? Number 2, how does the evidence show it? And number 3, why is it important? And I'll show you what I mean by this. Okay, so let's take a look at this paragraph again. At the very beginning, you'll notice that we restate and answer the question by identifying the theme that is explored in the novel. I also provide a bit of a bridge as my second sentence, where I explain how this theme is illustrated in the quote that I'm about to cite. This provides like a nice little connection between the quote itself and the topic sentence of your first body paragraph. You'll also notice that I used a transition here that's different from in the text it says, or the text states, or for example. Okay, those are more basic transitions that you would use to introduce a quote. But here I incorporated the quote a little bit more smoothly by using a sentence that leads into the quotation itself. And of course, I have my citation that has the author's last name and page number. And then after my quote, this is where I'm going to start explaining in detail how my evidence is relevant. So I'm going to start off with the what. Okay, what is happening in this quotation? So I said, in this scene, Miss Scalapino engages in racist behavior when yelling at Panchito for speaking with his friend in his native language. That is what is happening. Okay, so I start off with that sentence. Then I get into the how. Okay, how is the evidence illustrating this? So by shouting at Panchito and shaking her finger at him, she shows how angry she is that he's speaking Spanish instead of English. So I'm referring to exactly what is discussed in the quote. The fact that she's yelling at him with body and soul, the fact that she's shaking her finger at him, that's mentioned right here. Her index finger moved from side to side as fast as a windshield wiper on a rainy day. So I'm talking about exactly what and how she's doing what she's doing that illustrates that she's upset. And then after I talk about the how, I talk about the why. Okay, so this is significant because it illustrates that Miss Scalapino views Spanish language and Spanish-speaking people as inferior to English. Okay, so this is where I get into the crux of my argument. This is probably the most important part of your explanation, discussing why the quote is relevant and why it proves your thesis statement. And then, of course, at the end, I have my conclusion sentence, which sort of wraps up my entire argument. Overall, Ms. Scalapino's actions are detrimental, meaning it hurts Panchito's educational experience and his self-esteem. Okay, it makes him feel bad about himself, and it, of course, negatively impacts his education. So throughout my education, I asked myself, throughout my explanation, I asked myself these three questions. What is going on in the quote? How does the quote show it? And why is it important to your overall argument?